Welcome to the Linen Suit and Plastic Tie podcast. This is the podcast where we dissect and analyze the epic, the amazing, the cool, the inspiring, the awe-inspiring, the awesome power of storytelling and learn how to harness that power in our everyday lives. I'm Gore.
And I'm Kevin. This is going to be one of the more memorable recording sessions for us because we were just coming off of a little accident that I caused. I was trying to test out this in-person setup because we have never tried recording this way before, side by side onto the same computer but using two microphones. And I did a test clip. It was very successful. It went very well. And so I went ahead and tried to delete that test clip. And I accidentally deleted that entire project, which contains all the recordings from this episode that we are just about to get into in a few minutes. So that was quite fun. We had to talk to the support team of our recording platform to recover, and shout out to Riverside FM. They were very helpful. Marv's helped us recover the recording so we didn't have to send an awkward email to our guests and be like, sorry, we deleted everything we just talked about. But yeah, I guess there's a first time for everything.
I mean, it's interesting. And, I was thinking also about the variations. Like of us recording over at that couch at the beginning of the season, recording in my old apartment in Santa Monica, recording separately. And it's interesting because we run this podcast as an addition to what we're going on in our lives. Like you are working right now remotely in Los Angeles. I just moved back to Los Angeles for the summer because I just finished my first year at Wharton, and now I'm interning in Los Angeles. Huge funny twist, but I'm interning in Los Angeles again. So after 10 months, I'm moving back in. This summer, we're living together for the first time in 5 years. It's been 5 years since we lived together. 6?
Longer, yeah.
It's been 6 years. Well, I mean, as if some of you have been following the show for a while, they know that Kevin and I were college roommates. We lived together for 3 to 4 years. And then obviously we separated, started this podcast. So if you watched us for a while, you see different backgrounds for where we are in the world. But now we're living together. So it's going to be interesting to see how recording works this summer. But it's this thing about, one thing about our show is we've never had a consistent studio. And we've looked into it, we've thought about it. But I think because the way our show works, we like to stay flexible. As long as we always have a mic, we like to record in different places with different backgrounds. But I think we got to think about how do we do an on-the-move podcast that's always changing as we're moving for our jobs, our schools, our lives, while maintaining visual storytelling. Because I think podcasts like TBPN, Armchair Expert, do this really well with their set that kind of, like if you watch Armchair Expert and you see their set, it kind of tells you what you're going for. Call Her Daddy does this way too with the two white chairs. So I think it's something we got to think about, like how do we do this kind of mobile podcast while leaning into the visual storytelling?
Yeah, all very big questions we need to answer as creators, which is an interesting way to describe ourselves that I'm still definitely getting used to. But this week we have someone who is very knowledgeable in this field of creation, content creation, if you will. Monica Khan, she is what I would call a creative strategist. She has been very influential behind the scenes of influencers and creators that you might already know. And Monica has had a lot of great experiences working with influencers and also with brands and companies who are trying to either sell the product or create partnerships with the content creators that are out there. And she is someone who has a lot of great insights into how to build a new partnership and marketing model for the creators and for the companies so that they can both thrive and provide the best experience and content for their audiences. For her work, she has not only been an entrepreneur herself, but also been recently the senior advisor at McKinsey. So we're excited to talk a little bit about what Monica calls the creator economy, how that works, and how to best understand the future of partnership and marketing. So without further ado, let's hand the floor to Monica.
Hello, how do you do? Sit down, gather around. We've got stories about stories that'll mix you a drink of wonder and mystique. 'Cause life can be dry, better dressed for the times with the linen suit and plastic tie. Linen suit and plastic tie. Now here's Gaurav and Kevin.
Monica Khan, welcome to the show. Can you start off by telling us a little bit about yourself? What is your story?
Thank you for having me. So I sit at the intersection of creators, brands, and platforms. I've spent the last decade helping all three figure out how to work together in a way that actually drives business and not just views. I started out in finance and then made my way into consumer tech and followed that thread, moved into YouTube and then Meta, where I saw how creators were reshaping distribution and influence. And today I run Creator Revolution, where I manage creators and advise companies in creator-led growth. And I also work with McKinsey as their senior advisor on the creator economy on how large enterprises integrate creators into their marketing and product strategy. And so I really live on both sides of the table.
I love that. I think you and I have a lot of overlaps in our careers. You at Meta, me at Snapchat. I know my fair share of McKinsey consultants now that I'm in business school. But it's such an interesting career path because you went through kind of the creative revolution as these tech platforms were building. And we're going to get into a lot about what's changed, how things are changing with AI, how things are changing in the creator economy. But what are some of the things that you'd say have stayed consistent? That good content, good storytelling is just good storytelling. What are some of the things you see creators do that's not reinventing the wheel, that's just being shepherds of this industry that has existed since kind of man was making art of any form?
Okay, that's an interesting question. Yeah, I agree. I mean, what you just said is, I think, the biggest one is that good content is good content, and how you tell that story like continues to be the underlying element, regardless of what any algorithm says or does, right? I think certainly the distribution sort of piece of it has changed, as in, for certainly in traditional media and entertainment, gatekeepers have long played a role in determining how much distribution a piece of content would get. But if you think about it, the creator has kind of assumed the role of that studio that previously maybe gave them access, right? And the distribution, where they have to now think about the packaging and the title and the thumbnail, right? Whereas for, traditional media entertainment, it was like the movie poster, if you will. It's those same concepts actually still apply on social media. And I actually think that that's something that still so many creators today vastly underestimate. The creators that are successful, especially on YouTube, that is something they actually obsess over. And they have that actually figured out before they even start shooting the content, which I think has been, interestingly, like an aha moment in recent years about that content development process. But actually, it really puts all of that into the hands of the creator and having them own the whole process end to end, which I think back to I don't know, when storytelling started in the caveman days, or just like getting a mic and being in front of people, they owned it back then, right?
Yeah, I mean, distribution is such an key part of this field. You kind of touched upon thumbnails a little bit in content creation, and we see creators like MrBeast really, really perfect that A/B testing. That how do you drive attention? How do you get someone to click? I know Kevin and I, just in our little circle of the world, we recently started getting back on YouTube because I was a kind of an audio only podcast supremacist. I was a big fan of the audio only form, but as we saw new value with video, as we saw new ways to enhance our own story, we started playing around with that. And, content creation is not just about the content itself, it's how you package it, how you position it, how you grab attention when everyone's kind of bombarded with it.
Yes, no, absolutely. I mean, I think it's interesting how with the traditional model, it kind of bifurcated the different responsibilities that a creator today have now like kind of put all together and owning the whole piece end to end. This is why I actually kind of hate the word talent for creators, where it's like creators are so much more than just talent. But I think that there are some people who are technically creators who actually would prefer the role of talent, right? So I think that there still is a spectrum, but I think that the way that platforms have evolved and the way different business models now exist for content monetization, creators are in a position to own the process of developing and distribution of content end to end. And that is actually really powerful and exciting for the right storyteller that wants to build a business off the backs of that.
As you're saying, this current kind of generation of content creators, they're exploring beyond the talent role, but they're also kind of stepping into the distribution channels and develop ownership of their content. How have you seen the traditional distribution channels adapting or failing to adapt to this dynamic shift? I know it's a huge part of your work right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're definitely seeing convergence, which is very exciting. Studios are realizing that creators don't have to be competition, and they're actually the new development pipeline. Take, for example, I think Fox just launched like a creator studios, and they have a lot of content in the pipeline where they're partnering with creators like Darman, for example. So you're seeing studios partner with creators, they're acquiring creator IP, they're experimenting with creator first formats. And this is because creators have already solved that hardest problem of audience demand. Studios used to take risks on ideas, but now they can actually take bets on proven attention, where creators are actually showing that through the risks they're taking online. But what the amazing thing about studios is they continue to have incredible infrastructure that creators could benefit from in a major way. I'm really excited about that kind of convergence and both studios and creators getting really creative and strategic about how those kinds of arrangement could benefit each other so it becomes win-win. I think that the studios that are not doing what I described and are continuing to operate in sort of the de facto way of creating content are going to quickly lose relevance in the market that is sort of becoming what it is in the future of media.
We live in this interesting world of the media landscape where it's so much harder to have a shared moment, right? Because our distribution and our appetites being so fragmented. And there's a lot of pros and cons with that. One of the pros is that you can develop relationship with niche creators. You can develop this kind of connection with a creator, and then you can bring that creator almost as a character into different forms of media. Like Mr. Beast is an amazing example. Not everyone watches Mr. Beast, but he has enough of the zeitgeist that he has created a character of Mr. Beast, and that can now go on to the chocolate bars, and it can go on to the TV shows, and it can be a host of this stuff. It's because he's created this really important character, an interesting character of himself, and finding ways to connect with different audiences. But in this lack of shared culture, how do people break through? How do you break through when we don't have these, everyone's watching this one thing at one time really anymore?
I mean, I have to say that Mr. Beast is like, we love to quote him as an example, but he is certainly now in his own category where he built his presence and current domination in a world that doesn't exist the same way. So to your point, the zeitgeist culture has become so fragmented now with there being so many platforms. Everybody wants to be a creator and are doing it in some capacity, some platform, different business models, right? So exactly, how do you break through? And to me, it's always on. I think it's always on storytelling. It's consistency. It's showing up. There is no silver bullet to doing that. So part of that always on storytelling is, well, what are you saying about yourself? And how are you tapping into places where you can also draw upon that's trust? What I just described applies not just to a creator, but to a brand and to storytellers, period, regardless of where you sit, right? I do think that when a creator is starting, is just content is their brand and their product, it is easier than a brand to build their own strategy and story. Because at the end of the day, a brand is selling a product, right? So there is kind of a higher threshold, I feel, in sort of showing up always on, but they should be. But that's why it's even more critical for brands, if they want to break through, to be partnering with creators who've already built trust in their niches of the space of culture, to build trust with those audiences, that when brands partner with them, they effectively borrow that, if you will. And when a creator partners with a brand, they're kind of saying, hey, like, we like you and we're okay for you to join our party and come join us, right? And that says a lot to the followers that follow that creator, right? But similarly, that's why we see creators, smart creators who are wanting to grow their presence and business, regularly partnering with other creators, and they're being very strategic about it, right? Because you're sharing audiences, you're gaining from them, they're gaining from you, and it's a win-win where you actually create more value than on your own. So that should actually be something that creators actually regularly do. So I'm talking about principles that you could argue apply to all creatives and storytellers today in the way culture is moving and the way to sort of achieve that cultural resonance. That's the ultimate goal that you want to achieve when you're wanting to build a lasting brand today.
So you touched on so many things I want to dive into. Starting off is kind of a central theme of the show is that we're all storytellers, right? We interview a lot of people in the field, like you are, people in the media entertainment. We interview authors, people who are traditionally storytellers. But then we've had influencers, and we've had like one of our earliest guests was Austin Hankowitz, who's a big finance TikToker. We've had wine experts and auctioneers, because we believe that everyone is a storyteller. And it kind of goes into a corollary of that, is that everyone has a brand, especially in this world where we can create so fast and we can build opinions and make things look nice with different platforms so fast using different AI tools. How important is it at the highest levels that everyone develops their own brand and everyone kind of gets into the game? Because I know I'm currently recruiting. I'm in business school. I'm going through the internship process. And I'm having these conversations, especially with VCs, where I know VCs who are like, do you post on LinkedIn every week? If you don't call us. Like, is it important we all develop our own brand publicly, privately? What do you think about that?
Oh my God, I have so much to say on this topic. So I want to really carefully craft this. I actually think, all right, this is going to be a little bit of a hot take. I actually think everyone should think of themselves as a media company first.
Okay.
And if you want to be just a media company, that's also okay. There are plenty of ways to monetize today where you could build a livelihood that's sustainable just off the backs of being a media company. But whatever it is that you're trying to do, whether you're trying to get a job at Google, or you have a winery and you know that you need to market yourself and your brand, it's the same. It's the same. Everybody needs to be building content and leaning into storytelling today, because that is where audience and potential customers are. And that storytelling needs to not feel like you're selling. Because if you do it once in a while when you're launching a new product or a campaign, guess what? It's going to feel like selling. It's going to feel like you're being advertised to. But when you are always storytelling, you now are building an audience, dare I say, community of people who are buying into you as a human or you as a company and are really trusting the things that are being said and that you're saying. So that's why I'm kind of like, you need to be media first. And if you choose to monetize that or not, like that just depends on what your goals are. And then if you are launching a product, or if you are a creator and want to launch a product, great, you could and can, but that's a completely different skill set. and goal. And by the way, if you don't want to, and you've already built sustainability around your media company, awesome. Great. I think that like I've heard some framing that, hey, you're a creator, your content is marketing. It's not your product. There are some thought leaders who keep saying this. And I just want to set the record straight here. You can build content and that be your product and business, and you are good. And you are good. And if you want that, that's great. But certainly, as a storyteller, you can build a much bigger brand and business beyond that if you want to. If you want to. I think that there's a lot of like, you got to do this, you got to do this. Oh my God, content, that's just smart. It's like, no, like it's whatever you want and lines up with your goals.
To your point, I honestly don't know, like for content creators, what else could be our product besides the content that you create? What, like if content is marketing, like what are you marketing? What else do you create?
Well, I mean, it really depends on the niche that you're in and the following that you've built. I mean, let's bring up our favorite, Mr. Beast, who's obviously in his own category. He's as B2C as you can get, given the size of his audience and what he talks about today. But Feastables is a great example. He decided that of his audience, who are largely younger, who like candy, like this feels like a space that I could disrupt and really hasn't been disrupted in a long time. And I could build a whole brand around this with its own storytelling that fits into my brand as well. And he's now created other surfaces, extensions of his brand, if you will, like Beast Games, where Feastables comes up all the time, right? And now he's creating so many different business lines, like with Step Up, with the fintech company that he acquired. Like, I'm really excited to see what he does with that. I didn't see that coming. But once you dig into it and you realize that that app or that, that company is targeting Gen Z, right? I think there's definitely something there that's interesting, but not everybody can do it, right? And that's what I was trying to say before, is that you need to have the right people on your team to launch a different product or business. And there needs to be a lot of research done on who you're already reaching to build the case for what you should be doing. Like, they should be really thoughtfully considered. And I just think that, like, with everyone putting creators on a pedestal, they're the new founders, they're the new startups, and that's all great. And I believe it. I believe it too. But be smart, right? Like, that doesn't mean you are qualified to launch a separate product, right? In a line, in an industry that you may not know that much about. Like, it sounds good on paper, but the logistical elements of that could be really hard if you don't have the right people on board. And let's also be clear about Mr. Beast. Do we remember Beast Burger? What happened to Beast Burger? Where did it go?
I do not remember.
So Beast Burger was a thing. I think that was maybe the first thing he launched separate from his content. Don't quote me on that. But we don't hear about Beast Burger anymore, do we? Right? Because if you read about it, there was a logistical nightmare. And I don't want to comment on that because I don't know all the things, and we also don't know all the information, but we don't know what that is. And by the way, I am all for creators taking risks, right? It's like, you should be taking risks. If it's something that excites you, it's something that you've researched and you've hired people, or like you've built the team that makes sense to launch and run that. But that doesn't mean you're going to be successful, and that's okay. And even like with content and every piece of content you post, everything is a risk, but you take calculated risks. You look at the data to inform your strategy before you actually implement. But also, like, it's totally fine if a creator is finding peace of mind and like complete like gratification in the media company that they've created, and just expanding on different formats and different platforms that they're doing, like whatever floats your boat, like,
Yeah, everyone wants the Disney flywheel, right? It's interesting to see all these creators enter these physical goods. Like, it's a joke, everyone has a tequila brand, right? We see all these different people creating alcohol brands. We saw with Alex Cooper and the Unwell Network creating a drink of some sort that I'm blanking on what it does, but it's a unwell drink.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting that we see all these people finding ways to extend their brands into these different categories. And I'm curious what your thought on that is. How do you say, hey, this connects with my network, this connects with my brand? How do I extend the story into like a drink form? Like what do you think is the calculus behind that?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is where you need to really dial up your storytelling here of
Hmm.
like, what is it about you and your journey and your passions and what you've talked about your audience with, like in terms of pain points and things you aspire to be and want that tie into this drink or whatever niche or, category you're trying to get into. So that's how I would think about it creatively. But then the business piece of it is actually looking at the data of, well, who is actually following you, the space that you're going into. Is there an opportunity that's ripe for disruption because there is a gap in the market for that audience in that space? Like, what is the crossover there? That's, I mean, like, roughly speaking, how someone should be thinking about.
Yeah, and trust, right? We talk a lot about, that trust you build as a creator with your audience, and especially when it comes to expanding your product, how do you do it in a way that, if not enhance the trust, at least not sabotage the trust, because that
Absolutely.
that could be a risky narrative in itself.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's also like, what is the product that you're wanting to sell or category getting into? And like, strategically, does that actually make sense? Like, and would the trust that you've built with your community transfer and convert the way you may have with brand partnerships, right? I think actually brand partnerships are a place where you can also review what you've done in the past of like, there probably are areas where, well, if you've been really doing a good job of selling certain categories and products, maybe it's time for you to enter that market and maybe put a little break on the brand partnerships in that category, right?
Mm.
But again, we've seen examples of creators where, for all intents and purposes, they should have been successful at selling that product, but perhaps it was the way they positioned it or, something about the pricing, like all of those pieces that are also applicable to how you launch a product and build a business, like count. It's very hard. It's very hard to launch a new business. And I think it's way harder to launch a new business than it is to launch a new format of your content or launch on a different platform. It's a much easier transition to do that than the other piece. So I think just to underscore that, it's really difficult. And I think we have in the past year, 2 years, this creator economy has really blown up. There's a lot of excitement about creator economy as a buzzword, if you will, that we tend to glamorize creators as the new wave of founders and,
Hmm.
the next generation of studios and media companies. And I'm with it. I get it, but it's hard. And there are people on the traditional side, if you will, who maybe did not start out in creator economy, but have found a lot of success in working with studios, talent, whatnot, to launch products in those key categories. And I think it's really smart when you see a creator is really smart when you see them launch a product, when you look at the team that they've been partnering with to build that they've found people who are really skilled, either functionally or specific to that industry, that they have deep expertise. So I think, again, it really boils down to like identifying those gaps and being able to delegate that. Don't pretend to, also be the one to launch and do all of those things. It's a lot for one person to do.
What do you think are some of the creators that you've learned a lot about branding from? Like when you look at some of your favorite creators and you're like, oh, that's a really interesting way of approaching that. What are some of the key lessons you're learning?
Yeah, I mean, I think that creators should really be the ones who, when brands are partnering with creators, like really deferring to them because they truly understand their community and are regularly creating for them. So, what I've I've learned from them is that they are incredibly savvy when it comes to that integration and how to be creative and like the things to say to get people excited, how to weave in their personal story or other points of resonance with their community that have happened in other piece of content and bringing that in. They really are the ones that own their narrative. I work with Silicon Valley girl Marina McKinsey Co. I've also worked with Sambucha, and they've hired people and they have producers helping them, but they've built these workflows in a way where they still stay in the center. They don't remove themselves completely so that they don't lose ownership over their voice, that they're not completely delegating that. And they know how important that is to everything. That is everything, right? The voice and the creative direction and storytelling. And so while creators build teams, I think the ones that are successful not only do this to scale, but they still figure out how to stay involved at the core. And the core is the story, right? So that I think I've been pleasantly surprised by. But I've also worked with creators who would love to just kind of delegate it all. And they actually just want to be like talent and actors. And again, that may not be a bad thing. And you can still build a sustainable business that way. I do think that you're now not owning everything and you're delegating to who, right? Like, is it somebody that you trust that can take it to the next level? Like, I am always the mindset of like, no one's going to care about it the way you care about it. And I have found that those creators who are like more like, I just want to be talent, I just want to show up and I've figured out my team and process, they are continually and almost perpetually frustrated that their team is not working as hard or delivering in the way that they want.
So if taking a step back, if I'm a person who's just like, I have a career, I want to have more attributes to my career. I want to be posting on LinkedIn. I want to be building a brand. How do you start?
Yeah, I mean, I think I can only speak to me, and I haven't like really as an expert studied personal brand and how that's evolving and how people are doing it. A framework that has stuck with me that many creators have been talking about recently is the idea that I'm documenting versus creating. And so that the journey of being a creator for me on LinkedIn mainly is that I am now constantly thinking about things and feeling like I want to share things. I think I've always been someone who thinks a lot, but I didn't share. But somewhere along the like, I left the previous company I was at, thinking about different ventures I wanted to pursue, but also feeling like I want to share this with people because I want to get feedback. Like, think about when you're at a company, and the majority of my career is corporate. Like, I'm used to there always being a water cooler. There always being like an intranet or something where like I'm reading what people are talking about, or I'm hearing what people think, or I could just ask my coworker what's up. When you're a solopreneur and on your own at home or wherever you are, like you don't have that community so close. So for me, it actually kind of started with like LinkedIn being a community that felt really accessible and okay for me to share these thoughts, which are kind of nerdy, let's be honest, like these nerdy thoughts that I had that like, I'm not part of a company that needs it, but like, I think that people may want to hear it, or I want to hear their feedback. And I love the comments and being in the discussions. Like, I genuinely value the community piece of it, which then led to just like, okay, all these thoughts that I have on an ongoing basis and all the things that I'm building and doing, like, it just becomes this like addiction, if you will. I don't know if it's addiction, but it's just like when people are like, you're like a LinkedIn creator. And I'm like, I still don't identify with the creating. And I'm sure it also has to do with the fact that I've spent the majority of my career behind the scenes, helping creators, never being in the front, always being behind, and perfectly fine with that and not having anyone, judge me in any way for that. But I don't know, it just turned into like documenting like what I'm feeling and what I'm doing, and like, hey, how's everyone doing? And like, how do you, I don't say it like that, but that's actually what every post is. Like, I'm just wanting to share something that I think people will want to hear now that I've built this connection and I'm showing up, like I talked about, in an always on way. But when I think about this relationship and this habit that I've created in my life of documenting versus creating in a constant way, I actually see this ultimately as maybe storytelling about how I'm working with creators, how I'm, managing, advising companies and brands. And, certainly I want to grow that in different ways. So when I do this kind of storytelling, I know that I am front and center with people as well. So it is a lead gen, but it's also become a pastime that I truly enjoy. I will say that I truly enjoy documenting and connecting with others around the content that I'm sharing. But I'm having trouble with creator. I'm having trouble with that.
We have this closing segment called Suspenders. It's where we ask you a random question unrelated to anything. Give us any answer you feel like.
Okay.
Question of the day is, if 2026 is the new 2016, what's something you'd like to bring back from 2016?
What's something I'd like to bring back from 2016? I feel like it was very positive on social media at the time. And I think that people are still getting joy online, but there's just like a lot more negative connotation with it. And I miss the positive momentum and energy, I think, of 2016 that I'd love to bring back. I'm confident that Gen A is going to navigate us in a way that's going to bring back joy in a different way. And I have two kids who are Gen A and who love online content. And I already know that they are going to be creators. And I think everything I'm doing, I'm actually preparing to be a momager. I'm not even joking. So I'm just going to let that happen. And I hope that that joy will come back about all of the positive things that have come out of the internet and social media. It's brought so much for me. And that's my hope.
Well, on that, thank you so much for joining us. This was really good and overarching conversation on the creator economy, on the different levels of it, and the storytelling behind it. So we really, really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having really enjoyed the conversation as well.
Welcome back to Top Hat. This is the part of the episode where we dissect and analyze the awesome, the cool, the amazing lessons we got from this week's expert storyteller. And this week we had Monica Khan to talk a little bit about the creator economy, what it means to be a content creator, how storytelling is unique in content creation.
One of the key points we talked about with Monica is how she believes that everybody is a media company of one person. Because whether you are specializing in creating content or working in that field or not, even if you're just posting your own stuff on social media, you are building a brand and telling a story of yourself over time. So it pays to be more intentional about understanding what is the content you are putting out consistently and over time, and how do that string of content come together and allow you to connect those dots and tell a story of how your career, let's say, has been progressing over time.
And the key thing is, when you're a content creator, whether that's just the way you talk to people, the way you interview, the jobs you take, or if you're actively posting, like your resume's content, listing things on LinkedIn and telling the story of like this job led to this city, that's a story in itself, even if you're not actively posting. And I think this is the benefit of thinking of yourself as like a mini studio, or thinking of yourself as a content creator, whether or not you're creating content. What story am I putting out through the way I'm talking, the things I'm reading, the things I'm excited about, and the things I'm consuming?
And this has been another great episode of the Linen Suit and Plastic Tie podcast, adjusting to this new mode of recording because we're both realizing when the camera can't cut away from either of us, you got to be always on. Always on storytelling is also another point we covered with Monica. But rest assured, we have more episodes and great stories and insights coming your way. For now, if you like our stuff, make sure to subscribe and follow us wherever you watch or listen. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok at LSPT Pod, LinkedIn, Linen Suit and Plastic Tie.
You know, it used to be like a big thing for me to do a podcast because I ramble. And I grew up with kind of a speech impediment when I was younger. It's caused misunderstandings in my life because people will misunderstand sometimes how I pronounce words. When we started college with Benji, would have to reintroduce me because they couldn't hear like Gordon.
I remember that, yeah.
Yeah. So it's funny. So starting a podcast was such a big thing before because it was like overcoming the speech impediment, which is not great for editing. But now I have another thing to overcome with the video aspect because I cannot sit still and I fidget. Anyways, that was just a little thing that was in my head. But no matter who you are, no matter what you create, no matter what you post or what you say, you are telling a story of yourself every day. So you're a content creator. So ask yourself, what story do I want to tell? And how can I be more intentional and streamlined about it? But we appreciate you today. By listening to this, you made yourself a better storyteller. By listening to Monica, you made yourself a better storyteller. And we love you for that. See you next time.
Linen suit, plastic tie. Linen suit, plastic tie.